I've always wondered, maybe the creatures in a particular culture's mythology often stick with the land and people who believe in them. On the other hand, perhaps every culture's mythology is actually describing the same things, using different names and different understandings. After all, there are multiple shape-shifting entities within mythologies across the world, some of which are quite similar. Well, today, we're looking into terrifying things sighted on or near Native American reservations. You'll soon see that indigenous folklore is quite alive. Enjoy these allegedly true scary stories, and be sure to send me your stories at darkstories.org. I'm still looking for stories about mysterious creatures seen while camping, and disturbing creatures found in Sweden. Also, if you want more scary entertainment, check out my network of shows at eeriecast.com. We've got Freaky Folklore, a podcast exploring your favorite monsters, myths, and legends, as well as Redwood Bureau, a fictional horror anthology series that's like a mix of X-Files and SCP. Now, let's begin. Possible skinwalker in my neighborhood. From Soviet Onion. I believe I've seen this potential skinwalker many times, and I've asked a lot of people in my area about it. I live less than a mile away from a Native American reservation, and I've talked with the locals briefly about what we might be seeing here. Be warned, as the story has some violence towards animals. I live in a town near Phoenix, Arizona. It's small, but there is many mountainous areas right by my house. I've lived here about 1.5 years, and I've heard many people mention that a coyote likes to dig through garbage cans, eat out of the local McDonald's dumpsters, walk through the drain pipes, and supposedly lives in a small park nearby. At first, I thought it was really cool to live so close to the wildlife like this, since I thought we'd only see rabbits and the occasional scorpion. One night, I was taking a walk by myself around said park. I'd brought a flashlight to watch for scorpions on the sidewalk when I heard someone whisper my name. I whipped right around and looked all over the place, but I was the only one in the park. It freaked me out. I started to walk faster, thinking someone might have been following me. I then felt a very cold breeze wash over my skin. I ignored it, thinking it was just the breeze that comes off the mountains on occasion. That's when I saw the coyote that everyone's been talking about. It was standing on its back legs, digging through one of the public trash cans. I froze. Not only was this the first time I'd ever been so close to a coyote that wasn't in a zoo, but the fur on its back made it look as if it had gotten into a fight with a larger predator. Patches were missing and covered in what looked to be dried blood. Figuring if the coyote had won a battle with whatever it had come up against, I slowly backed away and I started to run home. I wouldn't see it again until a month later. My neighbor has an outdoor cat named Marty. Marty likes to pee on people's porches, so my mother set up a frequency alarm on the front and back side of our house. The frequency is one that only cats and other animals can hear in hopes it would scare them away. It also has a red light on the front that will blink rapidly if something is close by, sort of like a motion detector. One night I heard a screech coming from outside my house. My room is in the front, and if my curtains aren't closed, I can see the frequency alarm blink when it senses motion. I got out of bed and moved the curtain to see the red light flashing very fast. But I couldn't see anything in the street. Even so, the light was blinking, so I knew something was outside. The following morning, my mother was talking with one of my neighbors outside on the porch. I came out asking what was wrong. My neighbor had said that Marty came home last night missing an ear and had patches of fur missing from his tail. She kept going on, saying the local coyote must be attacking outdoor cats now. I thought that maybe the screech I'd heard last night was Marty. I wasn't sure, since my cats would have probably lost their crap if they heard another cat at all. Whenever Marty came up to the driveway, my cats would growl and hiss at him. I didn't say a word about the screech I heard. A few days later, I went on another walk, staying just on the edge of the park since there was a sidewalk. I was still terrified of that coyote. I came to the unlit part of the park and I pointed my flashlight into the brush. However, bouncing back from my flashlight beam were two orange eyes staring directly at me. I immediately moved my flashlight and pointed it at the ground, telling myself I was just freaking myself out. I lifted my flashlight up again at the same spot, and the eyes were gone. I told myself I imagined it until I was heading back home. I decided to take the sidewalk that was right next to one of the main roads, the most lit one. A side note, for drainage purposes, the city had built a very deep ditch along the right side of this sidewalk. Since Arizona gets some very bad monsoons, the ditch gets to about 20 feet up at its lowest point. The part directly behind my house is only about 5 feet deep, with a retaining wall ending my backyard. Anyway, I was walking past the deepest part of the ditch, where the drainage pipes end, when I heard it again. Someone whispering my name. "Jin, come here." I heard it coming from the ditch, and I thought to myself, there's no way that came from down there. It's 20 feet deep. I figured it wasn't anything, and I was just freaking out about those orange eyes. So, being an idiot, I walked over to the edge of the ditch, and I looked down. I almost threw up from what I saw. The coyote was tearing into a cat. I had no idea whether it was Marty or not because I could barely tell it was a cat. I'm still not sure if it was. I thought to myself at first that the coyote is a predator, and I suppose this is normal. The ditch is surrounded by small gray rocks, and I was shaking, and I accidentally slipped a bit, trying to get a better look without having to point my flashlight directly at it. A few small rocks tumbled into the ditch, and that coyote whipped its head around, showing its face to me. I wanted to run and cry at the same time. I had no idea what I was looking at. The coyote was missing its lower jaw completely, and its fur looked as if someone had placed a coyote pelt over a person. It stared directly at me with big orange eyes. I choked, frozen in place. I knew if I moved, I'd be the next victim in that ditch. What it did next fully proved to me it wasn't a coyote. It cocked its head to the side and rotated its head 180 degrees to get a better look at me. I swear I could hear bones cracking and popping out of place as it did so. I thought to myself, there's no way it should be able to do that. Then its body rotated to join the head. I couldn't stop myself. I bolted out of there. I couldn't watch anymore without throwing up. As I ran away, I heard it crawl out of that ditch, stumbling since the small rocks were all over the sides. It began to run on all fours down the sidewalk after me. I didn't dare look behind me. I just kept running. Like I said, this was one of the busiest roads in the town, and I soon spotted a car's headlights coming to turn down the road I was heading straight towards. I then screamed for help. The next thing I knew, I was in my bed. I sat straight up and asked my mom, "What happened last night?" All she told me was, "You came home from a walk with our neighbor Susie, who offered to drive you home since you were really tired." I calmed down a bit and got dressed. I told my mom I was heading to Susie's house to thank her, since I thought I forgot to last night. Susie's house was only a few houses down. I could see the car I'd seen last night and had yelled at. The car had a very large dent on the passenger side door. I rang Susie's doorbell. She answered and looked around wildly outside before letting me in. She was shaking. She asked me, "What the heck was that last night? What was that?" I shook my head. I don't know myself." She replied, "I saw that thing running at you on 4 legs, but as soon as you climbed in the car, it stood up on 2 legs and threw itself at the door. I just stepped on the gas and got you back home, and I didn't see it after that." I told her what had happened to me. She told me she was going to install a security system around her home after that. She was just as freaked out about it as I was, and we swore never to tell anyone in the neighborhood, so that they wouldn't freak out too. I didn't see it for a while, until I began to hear stories from my neighbors about the local coyote eating out of trash cans again. And unfortunately, someone had found their dead cat's body completely torn up in the ditch where I'd seen it. There were also reports of strangely active wolves around the mountainside. People were warned to stay away from the mountain after sunset. The reason I've decided to finally tell this story is because I saw it again yesterday. I was at a streetlight near my house on the main road, and I saw it dash across in front of my car. Its back legs were bent the wrong way, and still, its lower jaw appeared to be missing. It freaked me out so bad that I wanted to warn at least someone. I tried telling my neighbors to just watch out for the coyote, but they only believed me to keep their cats indoors for the night. I haven't seen Marty in a while, and my neighbor refuses to tell us what happened to him. So, if you live near South Mountain in Phoenix, Arizona, keep your pets inside during the night, and don't go out at night without protection, because there might be a skinwalker in the area. If anybody has seen this coyote, I'd love to hear your encounter. South Dakota Sasquatch, from C. Philly 100. This story is told from the perspective of my friend. Being half Native and half African American presents a unique set of challenges living in America, but I feel truly blessed to have grown up and spent much of my life on the Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. Now, it's well known that Native people tend to have more of these types of encounters than most, and Sasquatch are no exception. Many Native people regard Sasquatch as relatives of sorts, distant cousins or something to that extent, and that is not an insult, quite the opposite really. Sasquatch are masters of survival, masters of camouflage, apex hunters, and excellent foragers. They love their family members like we do. They engage in trade and barter like we do. They enjoy good food like we do. And they even like to dance to good music, play games, and have complex emotions like we do. Some people call them the missing link, but we see them more as relatives. Indeed, if you go into certain areas where Native people live, or used to live, and go out into the woods speaking the language of those people, chances are you'll get a better response than the white folks who go out into the woods hootin' and hollerin' or knocking on trees, which are actually territorial indicators which may well provoke an aggressive response. One night I was walking home from my grandma's house, making my way through an abandoned compound, when I stopped for a moment to relieve myself on some bushes. I zipped up and continued on my way when I heard something behind me. So I turned around and ducked behind some brush. I peered through the overgrowth to get a better look. At first, I couldn't see anything in the dim light, but gradually I could see something moving through the compound I'd just come through. It looked like a little orangutan, or something of the sort. It was cautiously following the same exact path I had just taken, even sniffing the bushes I had just used to relieve myself. Now, this little guy was probably about 4 to 5 feet tall, and covered from head to toe in light brown fur. Behind one of the structures on the compound was another one, this one at least 10 feet tall, if not 15. It was keeping a mindful eye on the little one, while periodically sniffing the air and looking around in an alert manner. And behind that one, back in the trees at the edge of the clearing, was a third, and this one was even taller still, its head reaching at least halfway up the lodgepole pine tree it was standing next to. The little one was still sniffing, but slowly making its way toward where I was, still crouching in the brush. So I slowly backed away and exited the area as quickly and quietly as possible. I'm not sure if they heard me or not, but I didn't see them again that night, or ever. That's my quick story. I think it stands out simply due to the sheer size and height of these things. They were huge. It's my understanding that there is almost as much variation to Sasquatch as humans, that they have tribes and regional groups with different physical characteristics and dispositions, much like the First Nations people of this great land. Creatures from a northern reservation. From Anon X. I grew up on a reservation that's located within mountainous terrain. I won't be giving specifics in terms of names because amongst indigenous people, it's frowned upon to mention the other beings that live and have lived amongst us. As a matter of fact, it's so frowned upon that we don't even have names for them. To talk about them is to draw them closer to you and to begin experiencing them. The stories that follow will be a collection of stories from the creepiest time of year for us there, the winter. You've got to understand that the woods are home to not only those ordinary little critters that are found anywhere. There are things there, respectfully, that are truly the stuff of nightmares. I never had a personal experience, nor did my family, until I was a freshman in high school. Maybe they knew better than to bring these experiences around for me, as I was the youngest of the family and sensitive, or maybe we never truly experienced as a family. Now, the things our family, friends, and neighbors have seen aren't your stereotypical Wendigos or skinwalkers. The nighttime brought two rules we had to live by, no matter what family you come from. After dark, you're not to look outside, or be outside. One night, my brother snuck out of the house to meet a girl who lived nearby. Teenage stuff, if you catch my drift. Fast forward to the later hours of the night. He was sneaking back through his window. As he was getting ready to pull himself in from the absolute darkness of the night, he heard my dog growling a few feet behind him. The dog we had at the time was from a known highly aggressive and territorial breed, but to hear him growling came as a surprise to my brother. He claimed to call out softly to the dog, but the dog was unresponsive to him. After a few moments, my brother slowly began walking toward the dog, and as he drew closer, the smallest glint of light hit my dog's face. As his face softly lit, my brother realized that the dog was not looking at him, but the area of roof right above his bedroom window. As he slowly turned and looked at the empty space, he began to recognize that heart-sinking feeling of being watched, along with the sounds of something sitting as though it was perched at the edge of the roof. The more time went by, the more dread he felt. He was so scared that he rushed through his window into our mother, panicking and telling her what he did and what was going on. She was so scared she wasn't even bothered by the fact he had snuck out. I remember watching and listening from my bedroom door, seeing her turn pale and beginning to shake. She warned him to never do it again and to keep his window closed. It was from that moment forward that not only our neighbors, but people from the complete opposite side of the community began opening up about their experiences with the thing that walks among the roofs at night. One of these stories includes a close relative who was home alone with an aunt one night. She claimed to begin hearing something clawing and walking on the roof. When she noticed it, she said it was like it noticed her or knew she was there, because when she tried to find a room to shield herself in, the footsteps followed right above. Imagine your own ceiling is made of glass, and this being always knows exactly where your foot is falling and the exact moment you extend your foot out for another step. The only way she was able to escape it was by standing in a doorway in which a blessed cross hung. That aunt began praying from her Bible. It wasn't until I reached my 20s that I would personally begin experiencing this creature on a weekly, yes weekly, I'm not exaggerating, basis. It was like clockwork once snow began to fall. There would be heavy footsteps before the sun was up that woke me up around 5 a.m. at least once a week. Those footsteps seemed to change on occasion. Sometimes it was like a grown man in steel-toed boots running around. Other times a small infant doing its best to crawl as fast as its tiny body would allow. And other times it would sound like chains dragging. I was so desperate for sleep and to not be bothered that I began to put holy water on my ceiling weekly, but it seemed to only hold off whatever this thing was for a few days before it came back again. Unlike my relative who found sanctuary under that small wooden cross, This creature seemed to make my childhood home its favorite place to be at 5 a.m. once a week. As time went by, not only my direct neighbor but the residents who lived several houses away would tell my family about their experiences with the thing. One neighbor was simply sitting in his living room when he began to hear walking above him. It left him paralyzed with fear, and all he could do was sit and stare in horror at the area above him. Another friend who lived 3 houses down was taking out her trash when she began to hear walking right above her doorway. She was so scared, she ran inside and refused to be out at night for months. But the list goes on with the small stories we've been told. Like the rest of the animals looking to escape the frigid temperatures of winter in the mountains, the other beings migrate to warmer places as well. It's believed as well that the area our reservation was placed was a cursed place, and they had very little to do with it until they were forcibly colonized there. Now we knew why the amount of creatures we shouldn't ever wish to see seek it out. They, along with deer, mountain lions, bears, coyotes, flee the harsh winter in the mountains surrounding our home. Another one of these creatures was something that could only be described by our people as a demon who took the form of a black cat. Luckily, I never had an encounter with this being, but someone close to me had, briefly. She, as well as the other kids in her area, were out riding bikes one weekend afternoon. She claimed that as they waited on one other kid to show up on the broken gravel road for the ride out, what she described as a large dog that was so black that no details were even recognizable on the body appeared. She said they all stood there, staring and trying to make out which neighborhood dog it possibly could have been. The more they looked at it, the more she said something wasn't right. It just stood there, watching them until they got freaked out enough to finally get a move on. It wasn't until I brought up this demon-like creature my people warned of that she got noticeably serious and almost on edge. She then opened up about this brief but strange encounter. I can go on and on about the amount of stories that left our friends, family, and neighbors shaken to the core for hours, but for now, I'll keep it at what seems to be the 2 most nightmarish creatures our people have continuously shared a space with since we were forced into colonization. Although this might interest people in seeking out these beings, I simply ask that no one actually take the time to. You never know what will want to follow you home. Make your home its home as well. My people had unfortunate circumstances that placed us on the one bit of land that we knew and still know is home to horrific, nightmarish, and cursed creatures. So trust me when I say, this is a horror you do not want to carry for the rest of your life. Nor is it a horror you only want to experience once. My own mental state is scarred enough. I want little to do with the night. Possessed by an Evil Spirit, from Nick P. I'm from New Mexico, and I'm also a Native American from a tribe located in the state. I won't name the tribe for privacy reasons, or say what part of the state I'm from. I'll start by saying that growing up on the reservation as a tribal member, you're exposed to a lot. Tribes tend to take their tradition very seriously and try to preserve it the best they can. Native tradition can be very rewarding and bring joy and happiness. However, there are things that happen that are not talked about on the res. It's no secret that there are people that are plain evil, and their intentions are to turn something that's pure into something wicked, or just flat out destroy it. We've all heard of skinwalkers and wendigos, evil beings and spirits that torment people or corrupt their mind with evil. As outrageous as those creatures seem to be, believe me when I say such things do exist. I've had run-ins on my reservation with dark entities, and I've heard plenty of stories from fellow tribal members or friends that have experienced similar things. For example, the things they experienced include unnatural whistling in the back hills of the reservation at night, or moving shadows in the trees, or arroyos that are black and misshapen, or owls that have an uncanny largeness to them, that perch up in nearby trees watching your house all night long. But this story I'm about to share with you didn't happen to me or anyone I know. It happened on a Pueblo reservation here in New Mexico. I was in high school at the time of this incident. I went to a school where it was nothing but Native Americans, thus you had to have native blood in you to attend this school. Going to this school, there was always rumors going around of sketchy things kids would see or hear on campus. Most of it was just that, a rumor, made up incidents to scare each other. But one day, what I thought was a rumor actually turned out to be true. While I was at school, I overheard a group of students talking about something gruesome that happened to someone. "Did you hear what he did to the body? After he did that, he sat there with his face painted," I heard a girl say to her group of friends. What the heck? I thought. I didn't know who these students were talking about or what they meant by "he sat there with his face painted." I continued on my way to class, and before lunchtime, I had a partial understanding of what had happened after asking around for a bit. A young man from the pueblo of Jemez had killed another young man in a very brutal way. As the lunch hour proceeded, I found out more information on what had happened. The man who had killed the other man were both friends. The man that committed the killing gutted his victim in a gruesome and satanic way, supposedly lighting candles around the body. There's no way this could be real, I thought. Yeah, maybe a man murdered another man, but in that type of fashion? And he did all that? Nah, it has to be just rumors. But when I got home, I found out all those gruesome details were real. There was no hiding it. It was all over the news. When something like a murder happens in New Mexico, especially one like this, you can guarantee it'll be on the news. I sat there in horror and disbelief as the newscaster spoke on the incident. A Jemez man is being held on murder charges for killing another man, 21-year-old Matthew Panama, on the Jemez Pueblo reservation late Saturday night. The rumors from school had turned out to be true. The man did kill his friend, he did gut him, and he did paint his face black and white, like he was trying to bring forth something evil in a satanic sacrificial ceremony of some sort. All of this was hard to take in. The incident not only shook the people of Jemez, but all the neighboring Pueblo communities as well. Weeks after the incident, information was still coming to light. Jemez Pueblo banned trick-or-treating that year. They also had the medicine men of the Pueblo perform a huge Pueblo-wide curing to get rid of any evil that was there. The reason they had to take such measures is because of the traditional beliefs they have. When an incident of this magnitude happens, the village must be cleansed. I don't blame them for taking such steps. They, as well as myself, believe this man was possessed by something that was pure evil, and it corrupted his mind. Some would compare it to the evil spirit of the Wendigo, or maybe something along the lines of a skinwalker. The Pueblos have their own names for those evil spirits, and I do believe one had gotten inside this man, or he was involved in black magic. But whatever the case may be, something sinister was definitely involved. Now, some of you might think I'm making this up or exaggerating on the details. I understand where you're coming from, because I enjoy listening to scary stories of the paranormal and such, and find myself doubting people's stories sometimes. But I can say with all honesty, this is true, and if you don't believe me, then check the description for a link to the article of the incident. That brings us to the end of this episode of Darkness Prevails. More terrifying stories are on the way soon, so subscribe and smash that like button. By the way, did you know this show is available as a podcast called Unexplained Encounters? Just search for, follow, and rate Unexplained Encounters on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. This show is part of the EerieCast network. Go to EerieCast.com for more scary podcasts, such as Freaky Folklore, which explores your favorite monsters, myths, and mysteries, as well as Redwood Bureau, a fictional horror podcast about an agent on the run from an evil secret organization that captures supernatural creatures and entities. Well, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there and stay creepy, because this world is a strange one.